This is the second episode of Sembra's growth series. And if you haven't had a chance to look at what our growth series is, it's really just an accessible way for people to come together and learn, connect, and also have just access to information and topics that are impacting our communities. These could be social issues, education points for us, topics that bring us further awareness so that we can be more inclusive and lead with equity in our daily lives. So this growth series is very intentional in the sense that we are bringing notable speakers and leaders to you every single month. And today we are so happy to have Ashley Carrasco on the call. And before I have her introduce herself, I will introduce myself. I am Jasmine Zamora. I'm the president and founder of Sembra, and we are an organization dedicated to creating equity in our communities so everyone can grow where they are planted. We curate community events. We offer speaking engagements for organizations' DEI needs, but we also are bridging the gap between companies and social impact in the community. And so with that, today's special guest, as I mentioned already, is Ashley. Not only is she a personal advocate for equity, she also just pays very special attention to community, to fostering spaces that are fun, but also that are educational, and always provides great takeaways for us to use in our daily lives. And yeah, I'll just let her introduce herself here.
Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Ashley. A little bit about my background is that I'm originally from Chicago or Chicagoland. My undergraduate was at the Indiana University in Bloomington, where I double majored in psychology and criminal justice. Then I went down to Wildcat Country, the University of Kentucky, and I got my master's in social work. And that was really where I realized what I wanted to do, which was work with people, especially in their education journey or in their healing journey. And so I literally went to college in 2006, and I wasn't back around in the Chicagoland area again until 2016. So I literally was gone for 10 years. And I didn't come back for summers. I went to college and I lived there, went to grad school and lived there. So a little bit unique. Usually people come back, but came back in 2016. And so I've been in Chicago working either in schools or nonprofits or as a therapist in private practice. And currently I'm a therapist at a city college in Chicago. And then in my spare time, doing things with Affirmed with Ashley. So coaching, consulting, public speaking. I love that I'm the second speaker because when Affirmed with Ashley officially became an LLC, the date was 4/22/24. So literally all twos or versions of twos. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Because we are doing this virtually and it's after the workday for some people, trying to make this, if you know me, engaging and as interactive and just uplifting as possible, despite talking about stress. But
yeah, so with that, to kind of break the ice a little bit, the title of this episode is what's stressing you? And so what we wanted to do was share an emoji of how you're feeling today or in general. It doesn't have to be just now, or maybe how you've been feeling. And you can drop that in the chat.
some people are feeling a little bit indifferent, feeling good, tired, or done for the day.
Crown emoji. I'm curious as to what that emotion is, but
I yeah, no, I'm feeling on top of things, I'm the king of the castle.
There you go.
I love
Yeah, I love the upside down smiley face too. And then some people are tired. That's expected.
some of those emojis. If anyone is comfortable sharing, we also had the question around what are maybe some of those specific things stressing us that could be work. The top ones are work, finances, our health, relationships, family, and anything else, Ashley, that's like top stressors, you would say?
Yeah, I think that you also just like lifing, like being a human, in general can be stressful. And then just like balancing all of those things that Jasmine just mentioned. So you could be just stressed out from work or finances, or really can be stressed out because you're balancing work, finances, raising a family, like having to deal with other relationships in your life, or working in a toxic workplace, or, all those things. So just to kind of get people engaged, just like what the question says, like what's stressing you? What made you show up here today, basically?
We have a couple of raised hands. I think Thriving Foodie has had her hand raised.
Okay. Is it Alina or Alina?
Alina, yes.
Alina. What's stressing you, Alina?
So somehow nothing, but also like a lot of things. I was actually
Mm-hmm.
talking to my partner about this today, because I was telling him, I'm like, nothing's wrong. Like, my family's fine. He and I are fine. Work's fine. I'm just tired. I think it's just,
Mhm.
I think it's one of those things where my depression, anxiety brain's like, nothing's wrong, so we're gonna make something wrong.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
but yeah, I think, like you mentioned, reframing stress isn't just work. It is a big thing. But like, I guess another thing that could be stressing me out, maybe, and I haven't realized it yet, is my youngest brother graduated high school. So family dynamics are going to change big time. My
Mhm.
other brother and I, we're still here in Chicago, but he might move out, and I'm living with my partner right now. But he's the baby, so I think just my parents now having to deal with each other solo, and me being the oldest sister dealing with all of that outside the house,
Mhm.
I think it's brewing. I think
Yeah.
this might be what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something that, hopefully we'll get to is like, there's stress, but then there's also anxiety. And stress and anxiety, even though people might think they're the same, they're not. They're different. And so what I hear from you is that like you are feeling stressed because you've got all these things, but also there might be a little bit of like anxiety brewing of like what you're thinking about might happen or what will happen. And so we can talk a little bit about managing stress and then also like managing anxiety today too. In the chat, I saw school, work, and family for someone else.
Ashley, is there anything stressing you?
I love that you're like, oh, let's hear what's stressing the facilitator. I think this is not a good one because I just came back from vacation. So my stress of life hasn't like it maybe it'll set like tomorrow or on Monday. Like I'm still in the vacation mode. But I think also for me, we hibernate throughout the winter in Chicago, and then summer comes and everybody wants to like make plans, and there's graduation parties and birthday parties, and it's like it's a good stress, right? We'll talk about that too. It's a good stress to have all these plans and things to do, but it can also be really tiring. And I think that for Chicagoans, we kind of push ourselves to do all the things in Chicago because we know like as soon as like November comes, we're in the house. We're not outside. We're in the house. Yeah.
It's a little bit what's happening to me. I was sick a few days last week and then had to basically recoup and not do anything so that I could be at family functions over the weekend. And then I overextended myself. So then I'm in this vicious cycle now this week, feeling behind and overwhelmed with all of my to-dos. So that is very real. I'll move on in terms of just setting the tone with, we're talking about stress a little bit loosely right now, but also it is very serious and a lot of people deal with it, right? I think a lot of times when we ask our coworkers or friends, colleagues, and we say, hey, like, how are you? how many times have we heard, oh, we're stressed? And it always is with the negative connotation of that people are feeling either overwhelmed or too much going on. And it's just a very common answer. And that's because it's a very common feeling that we have and that we go through as humans. And I'll share a couple of stats. The current stress level experienced by Americans is 20% higher than the global average. So about 55% of Americans currently feeling stress, according to the American Institute of Stress. These next stats are specifically from 2023. And I don't expect us to remember exactly all that happened in 2023, but there was a lot going on. There was, mass shootings and natural disasters in Hawaii, a lot happening in the political climate, on top of just our day-to-day, things that we go through as humans and as individuals in our own personal lives, right? Our health, like we mentioned, finances, work, etc. In 2023, 3 in 5 adults said they don't talk about stress because they don't want to burden others. So not only are we dealing with stress ourselves, but then we are concerned about how we are interacting with others or even asking for help. And I know Ashley and I will cover some of that and maybe best practices for sharing what we're feeling with other people. The future of the nation accounted for 68% of the stress that was being caused, as well as people reported 61% came from violence and crime in the US. So definitely social issues, social impact, which is why we wanted to have the conversation today, are really significant factors. And then I won't get into, every diverse demographic, in terms of race, gender, socioeconomic status, disability, but I really did feel this one was very staggering and also very timely because right after Mental Health Month, which is in May, we have Pride Month coming up on our heels here on June 1st, right, for the month of June. And for people who identified as LGBTQIA+, those percentages went up significantly in terms of people of that community who felt stress to discrimination. They cited that as 45% versus non-LGBTQ individuals cited discrimination as 24% of their stress. And not only that, but feeling accepted in their community, they feel it at 43% versus the rest of the population at 25%. So if we think about not just stress as individuals, but with our individual experiences, it goes up even higher. So definitely a lot to consider and a lot of factors, but I guess my first question for you, Ashley, and I will also preface if anyone has questions as we're discussing and talking about some of these things, please type them in. It's an open dialogue. We're not going to wait to the end. We can address them as we go. So if anything sparks your kind of interest or you're curious about something, please pop it in and we'll answer it eventually. How are you seeing stress showing up in the work that you do and the studies that you've been able to read on, and just like your client experiences, how have you seen stress show up for just individuals in general?
Yeah, to be quite honest, I think my first example is going to kind of relate to what you said earlier. Like when you said asking people, how are they? And the first thing they say is, I'm stressed. I would actually venture to argue that it's the opposite. How many times have we said, how are you? And people say, I'm good, but they're not good. I'm fine. Like, it's just like, I don't know. We've been socialized to be like polite, right? And just say good, fine, when really we're not. And then, so if people are expressing that they're stressed as a therapist, that's like amazing for me because it means people are sharing how they're actually feeling. So I love that. Because it means, again, people are just being able to express how you're feeling can actually help with how you're feeling. But I would say a majority right now, I'm working at a college. And so that demographic is a little bit different than when I was in private practice working with like couples or with adults. But I would say a majority of, you know, clients that are students or even not students is that it's school, it's finances, it's work. Being in Chicago, depending on what area people live in, it's like crime in their neighborhoods. You know, it's stuff that's happening overseas. You know, I think in the past, there may have been things happening on other continents and other countries, and we didn't have social media. So you'd hear about it, you know, like on the news, maybe once a day. But now we have this thing in our hand, so we can have immediate access to everything all the time. And so to be quite honest, I think the availability that we have of so much information is also honestly like a source of stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And there was definitely a lot of stats around that too. But as individuals and with the social media craze and having, you know, short bits of information available to us at all times, you're getting so much information from so many different areas, you know, YouTube, our employers, you know, our social circles have different things to say, and it's just, it can be overwhelming. And so the time that we're in right now is alarming. And I can't remember who the person was. I want to say, I'm not going to quote because I don't want to be wrong, but someone stated that we are currently in the next mental health and like social crisis, which is the era of social media. And
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it didn't come from Jay Shetty, but I think I heard it on his podcast that we take in like negative news in 24 hours, what some people absorbed within their entire lifetime is what we do now in one day. Because back in the day, to learn things, they had to write a letter or like listen to the radio, and like it didn't travel as fast. And so just thinking about, you know, there are things that we go through in life that are also stressing us out. But if you have something playing, even though it seems like you're not paying attention to it, like your subconscious is picking stuff up, like energetically, we're picking things up. And so besides just what we're going through, there are other ways that we can be stressing ourselves out. And part of that could be like what things we're putting into our body, into our mind, you know, all of that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to address something in the chat. Alina says, I've been switching to saying I'm okay, depending on the person, and I'll dive deeper. So with that, I think we could maybe talk about that a little bit sooner, which is, you know, if we are in high stress situations or are not feeling our best, is there a best practice or a secret ingredient of how we should be sharing that with other people? What, you know, who is that person? Um, you know, assuming that we don't have a therapist to share our stresses with, but what's your kind of take on that?
So, you know, like most questions that people ask me, my answer is it's all based on the individual. Like it's all like there is no magic potion. Like I can't tell you who in your life you can tell things to because I don't know those people and I don't know how they're going to react. But typically we have a pretty, hopefully, good sense on the people that are closest to us, right? You know, if we know those people the best, sometimes we can kind of tell, you know, who is this person that I can talk to that is going to listen, that is going to not judge me, right? Is going to support me no matter what. Like someone that I can truly trust, that it's not going to turn into a gossip thing. Like you don't have to worry about that. Like I can't say that for you because from my own, I'll just talk about myself, my own personal experience. There are people that I might have in my life where I have shared something vulnerable and I've only been made to feel worse after I've shared. And then it's like, well, why do I want to share and be honest with anyone if that's how I'm going to feel, right? And so unfortunately, some of those people can be in our own family. It can be in our own, friend group. So I would say, like, really think about who you're going to confide in, like someone that is going to trust, that you can trust. It's a slippery slope, but, I think everyone kind of has to figure that out for themselves. Of course, I'm going to say having a therapist helps, right? Because that won't go anywhere. And your therapist is there to support you. But yeah, just be picky with who you share with. If people that are like advocates for mental health or advocating for disenfranchised people, or like, the people that, are disproportionately just not given all the power, all of that, like, think about who in your life is advocating for those things, because the chances are that if they're like advocating for mental health, then they're probably going to hopefully be the ones that are least likely to judge you and be more likely to support you when you're reaching out for help.
Yeah.
And you also might be surprised, because sometimes there might be people that you wouldn't have even thought would be so helpful to you. And they might be. Like, it's just crazy how life works, but that can happen sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it also evolves over time, right? When you think about your community, your circle, the people who are supporting you in different ways, you might find that maybe a handful of years ago, you would have gone to one person, and at present time, it's someone else. And I think that evolution of being okay with having new people to lean on is very normal. And I feel sometimes in specific cultures, it's always like, oh, well, he's your primo, you need to love him no matter what. Well, if my primo's making me feel bad, then I don't need to be around my family if they're adding more stress to my life. And so I think also boundaries are really important when you're going through a lot of stress, because then that allows you to better focus on things that might, at least for me, I feel that it helps bring a little bit more clarity when I'm feeling really foggy or overwhelmed about, something in my life, like money or whatever the case is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, or, pay attention to the people that are sharing with you, right? If they're sharing with you, then that is already kind of an opener that, like, maybe I can share this too. But I would also pay attention to, like, who are the people that are around you when you're not a great time to be around? Like, when you're not your happiest and your liveliest, like when you're just having a not so great day, or you're just showing up and you don't have much to give, like, those are the people that are really there for you.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, I kind of wanted to hop on boundaries and, people. I wanted to make a point that family could be those people too. It's really important to set boundaries with family. Sometimes they kind of want to involve you with every single thing that is going on in your house, whether that's your siblings. Like, for example, I'm the oldest, right? And my mom kind of wants me to always be involved in either discipline with my younger siblings. And so something that's been really stressing me out is that certain situation that my parents want to involve me in every single decision when it comes to my siblings, o que los esté regañando, like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm not their mom. I have to set that boundary and just step out. So, family plays a big part of that too.
Yeah, I think family, and also like culturally sometimes, like, they're like, boundaries, like, we don't have boundaries here, like, that's not a thing, like, we do everything together, we're in the know, like, and that's just unfortunately not always the healthiest for everybody. So I think, yeah, setting boundaries is great. And there's a whole there's a whole thing of research and a whole thing about like oldest daughters. It's a thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're always the ones that are the go-tos, the pillars of the families, right? And then you add first gen implications to that, or just there could be a lot of factors. But thank you, Tanya, for sharing that. Just to take a step back a little bit, and I think Alina mentioned this a little bit in terms of identifying maybe like not just stress versus anxiety, but I know you and I had talked about like good stress versus bad stress. Like, can you maybe talk about how do we even know, how much should we need to be worried about our own stress, right? Because I think a lot of us may have a little bit of stress on a day-to-day basis. But then how do you translate that from, again, like a minor stress to very severe, or something that we need to be really mindful of, and possibly even take a next step of trying to get, external support or resources?
So the way that I'll answer that is, so just like the definition of stress, I have that here. I can just read it out. Stress is the body's response to any demand or challenge. When you perceive a threat or a significant challenge, your body's automatic response is to release stress hormones, such as adrenaline or cortisol. These hormones can be a burst of energy that help you deal with the situation. This response is called the fight or flight response. So it says physically, those hormones increase your heart rate, elevate your blood pressure, and boost your energy supplies. While this response can be helpful in emergent situations, frequent or prolonged stress can be harmful to your health. So, with that, whenever stress is basically a response to like an external cause. Like when you take that thing away, the stress will go away. But your body doesn't always know the difference between like a positive stressor and like I don't want to call it negative, but like a negative stressor. So the difference between like planning a wedding, right? That's really exciting, but it's really stressful. But someone that lost their job and is looking for employment or figuring out like how they're going to live, that's also very stressful, but it can feel the same almost in the body because stress is stress. Right. And so I'm losing myself with the question that you originally asked me.
That's because there was like 3 parts to it. So we have the difference between good stress and bad stress. We don't want to call it bad. All stress is stress. It just impacts us differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's based on what you just shared. But then also, what are maybe some signs or behaviors where, the stress then manifests into something greater that we say, okay, we need to seek out additional support or maybe do something to relieve that stress. And we can get into later, like what some of those tasks might be, or, self-care items or whatever they look like for our stress. But I guess, how do you know when you need additional support and your stress is like not manageable?
Yeah. So both stress and anxiety can affect like your mind and your body. So the things that stress and anxiety both have in common is like uneasiness, tension, like getting headaches or body pains or high blood pressure, right? Loss of sleep, or like changes in, maybe I'm like overeating, or maybe I'm like not eating at all, right? Like those, I think, if you're pretty in tune with yourself, you can kind of recognize, but we don't always pay attention to when we are feeling stressed. I think when that goes overboard, and that's kind of where anxiety can come in, is that, so stress is a response to an external cause, whereas anxiety is internal. It's an internal reaction to the stress. So I'm stressed out at work. I have a lot of projects, right? But then my anxiety might say, how am I going to do on these projects? How am I going to get this all done? Is it going to work out? All those things. So I think sometimes, that barometer of like how much stress is like, it might be stress, but it also could be stress plus anxiety. And then that together can really be what burns someone out. But I think, when it comes to stress, like really just overall, like pay attention to your body. If you're not feeling good, there's sometimes our physical body gives us signs if we're not recognizing it in our mind. Like your body eventually will be like, I'm going to let you know that you need to chill, right? Because then we'll get sick, or then we'll break down, or, something like that. So really just paying attention to what's changing.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And it sounds like a fine line between stress and anxiety, which is a little bit scary, and something to really, I think, pay attention, to, I think about when it's interesting that you mentioned about the job loss. I think about my job loss a few months ago, and I was really stressed out looking for a job, and it was stressful being, glued to my PC and exhausting the list of options that I had to apply to. Like, that was stressful. Now, what gave me anxiety was, am I going to be able to pay my rent or my mortgage next month? And so that's when you start overthinking and losing sleep. And, then you kind of go into like this, it's like what you mentioned, the flight mode of then problem solving. But I think there's just other ways for us to help ourselves through that, whether it's pausing and just taking a step away from what's stressing us. Maybe it's talking about it or journaling. I know that there's a lot of things that we could do. So like, are the things that relieve us from anxiety the same things that relieve us from stress? Like, what are some of those actions that we can take on a daily when we're just like too stressed and need a breather?
Yeah. So going back to your example, when we were talking about like stress versus anxiety, the stressor is that you lost your job, right? The anxiety comes into play when it's thinking about all the things in reaction to losing the job. And then I saw in the chat that someone asked if I thought that stress is the leading cause of anxiety. That is a very tricky question to answer, because there's a difference between like feeling some anxiety versus like physically having a diagnosed anxiety disorder, right? For some people that have an anxiety disorder, it sometimes doesn't matter. Take all the stressors away. That's just a condition that, that person is experiencing. It's something that's, going on with them. So that's a little hard, but I would say that reduce your stressors, your anxiety will reduce, right? And this is just talking about anxiety in a general sense, not someone that has an anxiety disorder. That's totally different. But chances are, the less stressed you are, the less anxious you're going to be.
Tanya says thank you too.
Yeah. And also remember that we didn't talk about this in the very beginning, but stress is literally how we evolved as a species, because stress is what gets your brain to say, I'm hungry, I have no food. And back in the day, like cavemen used to go and like, get animals and all of that stuff. So stress actually can be a good thing. It's what gets us to get up and act. It's just when that stress makes us feel burnt out or is, having other effects on us, when it's like, okay, this is too much stress.
What is a stress inventory?
Yeah, so I don't really know if that is something that I made up, or if that's actually something that's like available on the internet. But when we were talking and brainstorming about like what we wanted to talk about, I think that you had asked the question like, how do we know where people's stress comes from or something? And you said like, we kind of want people to get to the root of their stress. And then I think that's when I was like, well, people should take like a stress inventory, right? Because sometimes we don't really know. There's so many things going on, like what is stressing me? Because all of them, there's just so much. And so sometimes it, you know, I don't think that we take enough time to like stop and we'll plan a vacation or plan our weekend or plan a concert or whatever. But sometimes we don't always like stop and plan like what our self-care or what our, you know, stress inventory is going to be. Like really thinking about like, where is this coming from? Is it work? Okay, it's work. But what about work? Is it that project I was working on? Is it that person that maybe I'm spending too much time talking to at the water cooler and they just like dump stuff on me? Like, you know, really just trying to think about like, where is this coming from? Let me sit down and really like think about this. And if you have a therapist, then that's something that they can do with you in your sessions, is like break it down and figure out what it is. I'm always going to suggest that. But yeah, and there are ways to, you know, if sitting down and thinking about it is tough for you, like the act of writing, like journaling, not everybody likes to write, but sometimes you'll figure out kind of like where your thoughts are if you take the time to slow down and write things out.
Yeah. I think slowing down in general is something we could all be
Mhm.
better at with the pace that we operate in these days and how everything is so at our fingertips that pausing can also be scary, right? Because you don't know what will come out of what you're feeling and what your thoughts are telling you. So that can also be just a little scary, at least for me. I don't know if others feel the same, but there's a vulnerability piece about just taking an inventory of yourself and understanding where you need support and where you might be lacking.
So yes, it is scary, but if we don't do it, that is possibly an example of avoiding things. And the thing about avoiding feelings or avoiding emotions or avoiding, you know, anything, is that when we avoid them, that doesn't take it away. That just kind of conceals them. And then that typically what happens is they come back later. It's almost like a boomerang. Like, yeah, I'm going to throw this over here. But then when something happens, it might resurface. So yes, it's scary, but you might find relief over that fearful hump. Yeah.
And be less stressed at the end of it.
Yes. Yes.
Which is what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
So my last question to you, and I'll give you time, like share anything else we didn't cover, but you know, part of what we wanted to ask today, well, me personally, but also how we shaped you know, this program was, you know, at the end of the day, all we want to do is live happier, more fulfilled lives. And, you know, sometimes our stress can put a damper on that, right? Depending on the day or what we're going through in our lifetime. But at the end of it, we just want to live healthy, happy lives and, you know, achieve success, whatever that looks like for us. So what either can you speak to that? You know, what can we do? What are some practices or even like how you approach it yourself, I think could be helpful for us to understand.
Yeah. So whenever anyone looks up like the top, you know, stress management kind of techniques or skills or activities, for me, basically it all comes down to self-care. And I know that we just had our event where I was trying to like tackle that term, because I think when people think of self-care, they think of like that it has to be like you're pampering yourself, when to me it's like a basic decision. I think an example I used is like, I know that for me, certain foods or certain things really get my anxiety or depression like off, you know, it can influence it. So that's the difference between like getting like a smoothie or going to McDonald's, right? Like that, to me, that's self-care right there. Just making the decision that's going to be healthy for me and my brain. I don't really care about the calories. It's not even the calories. I'd rather just not be depressed and anxious. Like that's why I'm going to choose something healthy. So it can be your diet, right? So like eating, you know, things that come from the ground, fruits, vegetables, things that have vitamins, minerals, things that are going to help your brain so that your brain can then react well to stress. And then, very simple things like get enough sleep, move your body. We don't have to be in the gym like stressing ourselves out in the gym, that every workout has to be like so much and so hard. Like just move your body, go for a walk, like walk your dog. And then, I think I talked about journaling. If journaling's not for you, then maybe you literally write like 3 things that you're grateful for that day. In the morning, you can do it. You can do it at night. You can do it in the morning and night. And again, I think people think that gratitude has to be like, I'm grateful for this big giant thing, but it can literally be like, I'm grateful for the matcha latte I had this morning, or like, I'm grateful that I'm wearing like fuzzy socks or something. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, but gratitude, there's a lot of research that shows that gratitude can lower stress. It can reduce like your blood pressure. It can regulate like a lot of physical benefits, but also mental benefits. What else? Avoiding certain things. So for me, I can't drink coffee and espresso because it makes me jittery, but I can have tea. So like avoiding things that for you are not great. I can't, if I have like more than 2 alcoholic drinks, my sleep is thrown off. Like, so I just can't. But for some people, that could mean that they like limit their alcohol consumption, or they limit their, caffeine. Again, it's going to be very specific to each person, but I think generally as humans, all of these things are pretty much things that we should all be doing, right? Drinking water, sleeping, eating right, moving your body, talking to friends, or family or whoever's in your support network. That's also going to help reduce stress, because just the act of being able to vent about something can also be very helpful. Or else, I wouldn't have a job. Therapists wouldn't have a job. And then, I think also just however you're reacting to the stress, like if you're thinking, I'm so stressed out, I have this project and it's going to be awful and it's going to take all this time and I'm not going to do well. Well, then how are you going to feel, right? Like, think about your thoughts and be kind to yourself. Like, practice self-compassion. Just being compassionate to yourself is hopefully going to reduce some of the stress that you're feeling.
Yeah. The positive self-talk. And all of the things that you mentioned are basic necessities, right, that we need as humans, but it's often the main ones that are overlooked, especially when we are going through hard times or are highly stressed. What's, the main thing we hear when we're, going through something tough? Oh, we didn't sleep. Oh, we didn't eat. Oh, I didn't leave my house for 3 days. So just reminding ourselves to do those things, I think could really go a long way. Was there anything else you want to share, or any other thoughts from our last people here in the group? I thought we could also just end. Speaking of gratitude, I'm really big on that. I think when you go through hard times, like, you try to stay really focused on gratitude, and that's like my new thing. I practice a lot of prayer and just being grateful when I feel really happy. So maybe we could chat in something that we're grateful for. I think that would be a really good ending for this specific call. I will shamelessly plug Ashley. Her handle is affirmed with Ashley. And, this is something that she advocates for in her business and her daily life, is affirmations for yourself. And they really are truly powerful, whether you practice them often or maybe just practice them when you really need them. But I think just the act of practicing affirmations can be so powerful, and I don't think it's talked about enough. Positive affirmations.
My mom, what she's grateful for is being 11 years cancer free. So
Yes.
awesome. I'm grateful for coming home to my sweet dogs and a home-cooked meal. Amazing. Love that.
I know. I
I
do
would
love
say
a home-cooked meal.
you do. I would say something for me is just like grateful for like opportunity. However opportunity has been coming my way recently. I'm just like, even this is like an opportunity. So good to be talking to you and, you know, have these others with us as well.
Grateful for spaces like these. Yes.
Awesome. There is so much that we did not get to. So I think, you know, the next one might have to be another in-person, maybe 3-hour event, like other ones, because the hour just goes by so fast. And again, there's just so much that we didn't get to talk about. But awesome. Thanks for coming, Stephanie. I'm grateful for joining today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Especially when we want, you know, some interaction, it takes up some time. But I think just these bits and having, you know, bite-sized opportunities for people, and now they know you. So if they have questions or, you know, want to reach out to you, I'm sure you welcome that. So
Yeah.
maybe you can drop your @ in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Do you know
It's
how to?
very, yeah, it's really simple. It's literally just @affirmed with Ashley. That's me. You can add me if you have questions, you know, reach out.
Yeah, also we will be posting the recording on Sembra's Instagram, and so if you feel this conversation will be helpful to someone, feel free to share it out, and it'll be posted on our YouTube channel. I'm grateful for all of you and for having this moment again with Ashley, and for having inspirational people like her be part of the Sembra community. So
Of course, Sembra Squad.
we need Sembra Squad t-shirts.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Take care, everyone. Get rest. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself tonight. Okay.